This video is brought to you by Printful. Stick around to hear more about their high-quality print-on-demand services. What is catfishing? For most people, the common definition of catfishing centers on romance. It's the process of fabricating some sort of online profile and then using that profile to manipulate people in a romantic capacity, typically for the purpose of stealing their money. But what if I told you that there was an entirely separate definition of the word? Brought about as a direct result of the post-COVID work-from-home type job economy, catfishing has now evolved dramatically. Instead of simply operating around the concept of manipulating a vulnerable romantic partner, catfishing has now expanded to involve the concept of nuclear-level nation-state threat actors deliberately targeting Fortune 500-level software companies. It sounds like a faraway concept. Cyber espionage seems like a term relegated to the world of Hollywood screenplays, not so much everyday technology jobs. But with a perfect storm of coalescing factors, such as AI tool development or work-from-home pandemic policies, what we are faced with is a world where hundreds of top-level Silicon Valley startups and tech firms have hired, currently employ, and will continue hiring North Korean IT workers posing as Western software developers, who then funnel their paychecks back to North Korea, helping fund its ballistic weapon and nuclear programs. Just to set the stage properly, I want to start with a couple of examples to showcase relative scale. First up, in early 2025, a woman named Christina Marie Chapman, a resident of Arizona, pleaded guilty in connection with a scheme where North Korean IT workers were posing as U.S. citizens, funneling in excess of $17 million to the country after getting hired to more than 300 different U.S. firms by way of a laptop farm that she was running out of her Arizona residence. And that's just one example. Second would be research from Sentinel Labs, a division of SentinelOne, which is itself a cybersecurity company, which discovered, quote, roughly 360 fake personas in over 1,000 job applications linked to North Korean IT worker operations applying for roles at SentinelOne, end quote. And that's just one company. 360 personas in over 1,000 different job applications from North Korean infiltrators at this one individual cybersecurity firm. Yeah, it turns out the scale of this operation is kind of mind-blowing. Here's another indictment from January 2025, where multiple US-based facilitation companies were used, complete with forged identification documents and exfiltrated salaries. Here's another indictment, once again made possible with US facilitators, but this time I want to read a descriptive paragraph about one of those facilitators to properly express kind of the gravity of the situation, because simply saying the word facilitator doesn't really accurately convey how severe it can get. Quote, Individual C was a California resident, an active duty member of the United States military, and a secret clearance holder who, in exchange for a fee, hosted U.S. victim company laptops at Individual C's residence and facilitated remote access to the laptops by overseas IT workers. End quote. Hopefully that adequately expresses the magnitude of what we're dealing with, because the phenomenon of remote worker infiltration inside US technology firms isn't just a passing headline. It's a consistently waged war now against the integrity of remote work hiring practices across multiple different industry sectors, including finance, technology, and software development, all for the benefit of the North Korean nuclear and ballistic missile program. On the subject of remote work, in all honesty here, it's an extremely appealing concept. Whether it's because of COVID-era mandatory procedure or even widespread data now suggesting that many remote jobs and workers are more productive compared to a traditional in-office structure, the concept of working from your home with all the flexibility and convenience attached to it is basically a sought-after dream. Well, as the transition continues, that is, more people returning to a typical office structure with less and less remote options available, there is still an abundance of other options out there which revolve around services such as print-on-demand. Today's video sponsor, called Printful, is one of those services, and it's actually a very easy process to set up an alternate income stream selling everything from t-shirts to mugs and hoodies and more. A lot of it comes down to a specific niche, like video games or maybe some sort of hobby such as wood carving, after which you create, find, or commission a design or several. Tools like Canva, freelancer websites like Fiverr, there's an abundance of options out there, and then simply go to Printful, choose the products you want, and upload. You can sell everything from sportswear all the way to home apparel, and you can easily connect Printful to other accounts on Etsy or Shopify to publish your products when you're done. It's an easy and, most importantly, consistently replicable process, which then allows you to begin building up side income streams on your own schedule at your own pace with all the same resources compared to large, massive worldwide brands. If you want to try out Printful for yourself and begin exploring the world of a self-governed print-on-demand side business, you can use the link down below to check out their services and get started today. Again, link down below in the description to check out Printful and begin building your own sustainable side income business today. Big thank you to Printful for sponsoring the channel. Now, obviously something like print-on-demand, POD, is a legitimate source of income, but next I want to examine how exactly it became possible for an unknown, yet extremely substantial number of North Korean IT spies to get jobs at literally hundreds of top Silicon Valley startups and Fortune 500 companies. The short answer is AI. After COVID-era lockdown protocols forced practically the entire existing business world to integrate remote tools, the perfect storm made landfall soon afterward, with the mass commercialization of AI programs. It's not just North Korean spies either. ChatGPT-style tools are now causing problems across a multitude of industries, even becoming a focal point in the world of education. Students are using these programs to cheat on their assignments at a horrifying rate, and the fact of the matter is that large language models are trivializing the interview process for all sorts of different careers and jobs. Having the ability to run two separate monitors and basically just cheat your way through the interview process on subjects that you don't really know anything about on your own is bad enough by itself, but there's more. AI tools are now capable of real-time video augmentation where someone can appear, visually speaking that is, completely different on a Zoom call with terrifying accuracy. When you open the video chat all at once, beginning in like 2022 or 2023 maybe, when you open that video chat, you actually have no idea if the person that you're talking to looks that way, sounds that way, or legitimately knows any of the things that they end up talking about. Because the entire process can be emulated, or rather fabricated, with the help of mass-adopted AI tools that everyone has access to at their fingertips. What's more, because these candidates are entirely fabricated, the resumes that they present for the hiring process are naturally flawless. And then if a company ends up falling for it, things can get even worse. See, the directive here isn't necessarily focused on stealing information. In fact, it typically isn't about stealing information or installing malware. It certainly happens at times, but that's not the main objective, because the main objective is something now called wage moling, like a mole that digs under the ground, which means securing the job, actually doing the job, and sending the paychecks home to North Korea, thereby funding weapons development. I should clarify, sometimes these infiltrators are in fact attempting to steal intellectual property or install malicious programs, but the ultimate goal is to secure funding, right? That's the end-all be-all of the entire operation. And a high-paying salary software job, in excess of sometimes $300,000 per year for some of them, is a much more predictable way to do that. If you attempt to implement some sort of backdoor in the employer's system, you very well may get caught while doing so, and there's examples of that precisely happening. A notable one would be cybersecurity firm KnowBe4, which hired a North Korean impersonator who successfully made it through the interview process, but then subsequently caught them as they attempted to install malware on a company laptop. If the worker had simply performed the job adequately, meeting expectations, right, and going below the radar, they likely could have harvested a salary for multiple years. In this particular case, I think the upside associated with infiltrating a high-level cybersecurity firm probably outweighed the amount of money that the worker could make in salary, so they obviously did it. But when these workers keep their heads down and simply just perform the job, they're actually not typically detected very fast at all after the hiring process has completed. The most interesting thing about this, though, is that these workers are not solitary job seekers or legitimate engineers who just work out of a spare room in their house or apartment. Far from it, in fact. These individuals are part of an espionage team, which means that they have the ability to go ask experts for help on their team if the job presents them with like a problem that they can't personally solve. What's crazy is that a lot of companies who mistakenly hire North Korean IT spies typically find them to be excellent workers because they didn't just hire one engineer for the position. They unknowingly hired a team of people whose solitary goal is to do a good enough job where they don't get fired and continue harvesting a reliable paycheck. Giving a worker like that some sort of complex problem can sometimes yield extraordinary results because the worker then outsources the issue to an entire team of intelligence assets who make sure that they do a good enough job where the boss remains happy, creating a really interesting situation where some of the companies who end up hiring these impersonators, these foreign assets, don't even really want to let them go even when discovered because of how valuable they can be. Of course, they might be installing backdoors in your system, setting up ransomware for a future payment, or any number of other highly damaging activities. But it's a thought-provoking situation to realize that the worker you hired, even if that worker is a foreign agent, might technically be doing the job far better compared to whatever other individual employee you come across afterwards, and what they would be able to do. Oddly enough, also hilariously, there's an extremely simple technique which can be used and has been used by various different, hiring managers and even YouTubers to make sure that the person you are interviewing has no connections whatsoever to North Korean intelligence. And it's about as rudimentary as you can possibly imagine. All you have to do is ask them to agree that Kim Jong-un is fat, and they will immediately disconnect. Because the process is so heavily monitored, anything they say is recorded probably multiple different ways: audio, keyboard inputs, camera, etc. So when faced with any sort of degrading discussion or comments about Kim Jong-un, dear leader, it instantly becomes a liability for them. They straight up will not engage with it, which means you can basically guarantee that anyone who responds in any normal way whatsoever to a prompt asking them to call Kim Jong-un fat or stupid or whatever it happens to be, just insult him in some capacity. Anyone who's willing to do that almost certainly isn't a North Korean asset, which I find to be totally hilarious. Because for all of its sophistication, with fake documents and visuals and laptop farms in the houses of domestic collaborators, for all of these highly advanced techniques, you can literally render them utterly incapacitated by just saying, please agree that Kim Jong-un is fat. And they just fall over. It just doesn't work. It doesn't compute. Failure of the system. Anyway, all of this is to say that if you work in software development, crypto, general technology, or pretty much any adjacent industry, that remote coworker that you have, right? The one who doesn't talk much but always gets their assignments done. Yeah, there is a non-0% chance that they're a North Korean spy. Just from what we can see publicly announced by the DOJ in December of 2024, an indictment was issued against a single ring of 14 North Korean IT workers who had generated at least $88 million across 6 years of remote work fraud. We're talking many hundreds of millions of dollars per year total across all industries, going as far back as 2018 by some estimates. Obviously, the issue has exponentially grown as a result of work from home policies, COVID stuff, and AI advancement. But the issue of North Korean assets infiltrating Western technology companies is a very real threat, which continues to be an omnipresent problem. Underscoring that point, speaking at the RSAC Global Cybersecurity Conference in 2025, Mandiant Consulting CTO Charles Carmichael said, quote, "There are hundreds of Fortune 500 organizations that have hired these North Korean IT workers. Literally every Fortune 500 company has at least dozens, if not hundreds of applications for North Korean IT workers. Nearly every CISO that I've spoken to about the North Korean IT worker problem has admitted they've hired at least one North Korean IT worker, if not a dozen or a few dozen." End quote. Not that this is by any means a complete solution, but the risk management firm DTEX has an evolving list of email addresses on its website publicly, which are highly suspected to belong to North Korean agents or at least be closely associated with them. And we're talking about a very long list of addresses here, which is a really good starting point for anyone who's currently grappling with the hiring process, if there's anyone like that who watches the channel, and might be concerned about some of their potential candidates. I often get feedback from a lot of people asking what can be done about these topics that I talk about. So for this one, checking the DTEX registry if you're an employer attempting to go through the hiring process is at least a rudimentary step that you can take. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make right now is that in the world of remote access technology jobs, as the tools for faking every single aspect of someone's personal identity rapidly advance, well and truly beyond the counteracting mechanisms for detecting them, in such a world, sometimes the best candidate isn't actually the person you should hire. Maybe the perfectly crafted resume from the person who's overqualified and overly enthusiastic and inexplicably willing to accept tens of thousands of dollars less than their peers. Maybe, just maybe, the person who seems too good to be true actually is too good to be true. Seems like they often are in the current landscape, because they're a foreign agent, aka, depending on the industry, your coworker might be a North Korean spy. That's it. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. The video sponsor, Printful, of course, locals and Patreon, monthly memberships, a special VPN deal, merchandise, social media, etc., etc. But I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, question everything, and have a nice night.